All right, let's dive into something that I think we can all relate to, finding love. You sent over this interview between Lewis Howes and Dr. Joe Dispenza, and
Yeah.
it's really got me thinking because it's not your typical, like, dating advice.
No, not at all. And Dispenza, he kind of throws that whole finding love thing right out the window.
Really?
Yeah, he says we've got it completely backwards. He says it's not about finding love out there, it's about becoming love.
Becoming love. I like that. It's like we're always looking for it outside ourselves.
Right.
When really it might be more about cultivating it within, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, he doesn't just leave it at that. He doesn't just say become love. He gives you the how. And that's where it gets really interesting because he says that we attract what we are energetically, not just what we want.
Okay, so it's less about that list of qualities we want in a partner and more about what embodying those qualities ourselves.
Exactly. It's like you're not putting an order out to the universe for something you lack. You're becoming the thing that you're seeking.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we actually go from wanting, say, a kind and compassionate partner to being that kind of person?
Well, Dispenza really challenges us to redefine what we even mean by love. He says a lot of people are actually looking for happiness in a relationship, and they're mistaking it for love.
Well, that's interesting.
And it's easy to mix those two up, right?
Yeah, for sure. So what's that distinction? How do we tell if we're looking for love or happiness in a partner?
Think about it this way. When we feel incomplete on our own, like something's missing, it's easy to look to a partner to fill that void, right?
Right.
But that's where we get tripped up because that mindset, that you complete me energy, it actually repels the love that we want because we're coming from a place of need, not wholeness.
So it's like we're broadcasting on a frequency of I lack something.
Exactly.
And that's not going to attract the frequency of I am whole and I have love to give.
Exactly. It's like trying to attract a positive charge when you're emanating negative energy. It just doesn't work.
They don't vibe.
They don't vibe. So if we're stuck in negativity, and Dispenza specifically mentions anger, hostility, fear,
Yeah.
we literally don't have the right magnetic field, to use his analogy, to attract a loving relationship.
So the million-dollar question is, how do we change that?
Yeah.
Especially if we've been kind of stuck in those negative patterns for, a long time.
Yeah. How do we hit the reset button on our energy?
Exactly.
Is the big question. This is where Dispenza's work gets really interesting because he says we need to shift from those survival emotions, the fear, the anger, and really, start to embody these elevated emotions like love, gratitude, joy.
We have to rewire our brains a bit.
Yeah.
We have to rewire our internal circuitry to stop operating from a place of constantly being in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And start existing from a place of love. Is that kind of what he's getting
Yeah.
at?
Exactly. He even goes so far as to say that we need to embody the feeling of love before the relationship even shows up in our lives.
Oh, wow.
Not wait for it to show up and then start feeling love.
So we almost have to convince our minds and bodies that we're already in a loving relationship, even if we're single or things are rocky right now.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty radical.
It is radical, but think about it this way. Dispenza talks about tuning yourself to the right frequency to pick up the right signal.
Okay.
The frequency of love is where you want to be tuned to.
So how do we do that? Are we just talking about vision boards and positive affirmations here? Because I've tried that, and honestly, sometimes it feels kind of, I don't know.
Surface level.
A little bit, yeah.
He goes way deeper than that, and he has this whole toolkit of techniques. But meditation is a cornerstone of his practice.
Okay, yeah, meditation. But I got to say,
Yeah.
sometimes I feel more stressed out after trying to meditate. I feel like I'm doing it wrong.
Well, and a lot of people feel that way, but with Dispenza's method, you're actually cultivating the feeling of love or gratitude or joy or whatever it is you're wanting to attract until it becomes a familiar state.
So we're not just thinking about love in this abstract way.
Right.
We're really trying to drop into our bodies and feel it in our hearts and let our whole system become familiar with that vibration.
Yes.
Okay, I can see how that would be really powerful.
And this is where the heart coherence piece comes in.
Okay.
Dispenza talks about the heart as this incredibly powerful center of creation, this energetic force field.
Yeah.
And when we're feeling love and gratitude, our hearts literally start to emit a different electromagnetic frequency.
So our hearts are like beacons, and we can amplify their signal by cultivating these elevated emotions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. But what about all the baggage? Like, what about all the, negative thought patterns and limiting beliefs that we all kind of walk around with?
Yeah.
How does that factor into all of this?
That's huge. And Dispenza calls those our unconscious programs, right?
Okay.
It's the negative self-talk, the limiting beliefs.
Right.
He says we have to become aware of those before we can even begin to rewrite them.
So it's like debugging a computer program.
It is, yeah, like cleaning up the code.
Okay, so if our brains are the computer, how do we go about finding and fixing those faulty lines of code?
Well, he talks about a few different ways. Mental rehearsal is a big one.
Okay.
And that's basically where you're vividly imagining yourself acting and reacting from a place of love.
So let's say someone has a tendency to get jealous or insecure in relationships.
Yeah.
They might use mental rehearsal to visualize themselves reacting with trust and openness instead.
Yes, exactly. It's about creating this new internal blueprint that's aligned with the love that you want to experience.
So we're not just waiting for our circumstances to change or waiting for our, old patterns to magically disappear.
Yeah.
We're actively participating in shaping our reality.
Yes, love is not something that happens to you.
Right.
It's something that you cultivate.
This is also fascinating, but I have a question about the real world application of all this. What happens when one person is doing all this work? Like they're really trying to embody love and gratitude and all that, but their partner, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
It's a great question. And you're right. Relationships are a two-way street, so to speak.
Right.
And Dispenza actually addresses this directly. He actually cautions against trying to force these ideas onto anyone.
Really?
Yeah. He says, transformation, it kind of speaks for itself.
Oh, interesting.
Like you become the example, not the preacher.
Okay, so less about trying to get my partner to meditate with me or, manifest the perfect relationship, and more about just focusing on embodying that energy myself, even if it feels like I'm doing it solo for a while.
It's more about holding that frequency.
Okay.
Even if your partner's not quite there yet.
We should.
It doesn't mean you have to ignore issues or pretend like everything's perfect, but it's about approaching those challenges from a more loving, heart-centered place.
Dispenza also talks a lot about honest communication.
Yes.
As being a big part of this.
Absolutely.
So it's not about bypassing conflict or anything.
Right.
But maybe shifting how we communicate.
Exactly. He's all about authenticity, really showing up as your true self and being vulnerable.
So this whole idea of self-love, which Dispenza talks about a lot, I used to think it was about putting myself first all the time,
Right. Yeah.
almost in a selfish way.
Yeah.
But now I'm realizing it's more about honoring my own growth and my own needs,
Yes.
even if it means, making tough decisions.
Absolutely. And that takes a lot of courage, especially in the realm of relationships,
Yeah.
Because sometimes the most loving act is actually letting go of something.
Wow.
Even if it's a relationship that's no longer serving anyone's highest good.
So to wrap all this up, for our listeners who are, maybe feeling stuck in their love lives or just wanting to cultivate more love in their lives in general, what would you say are the biggest takeaways from Dispenza's work?
I think it really comes back to that idea of becoming love itself, It's not about waiting for the perfect person to show up and magically fix everything.
Right.
It's about doing that inner work to become a vibrational match for the love that you want to experience.
So less I need someone to complete me, and more, I am whole and worthy of giving and receiving love.
Exactly. And the best part is it's not just some vague feel-good concept, Dispenza grounds this all in real science, neuroscience, how our energy works, and he gives us practical tools that we can use, like meditation, mental rehearsal, to actually shift our energy and attract something real.
So we actually have more power than we think to shape our own realities.
Yes.
And it all starts with awareness.
Awareness is key. Yeah. Just becoming aware of the energy that you're putting out into the world.
So if you're listening to this and you're craving a more loving, fulfilling relationship, or maybe just a deeper love for yourself, Dispenza would ask, what energy am I broadcasting right now?
That's the question.
That's such a good question. And a great place for us to wrap up. This has been such a fascinating deep dive, and we hope it's given you some food for thought and maybe even inspired you to, start tuning your love frequency a bit.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.